This episode is brought to you by the Ridge Power Bank. Sick of lugging around a bunch of different charging cables when you travel? With Ridge's new 5-in-1 power bank, you've got everything you need to charge all of your devices at once, no problem. It comes with built-in cables and wireless charging capabilities, so whether you're charging your phone, smartwatch, headphones, or anything else, Ridge has you covered. Plus, with 20 watts of power and a 10,000 milliamp capacity, the Ridge Power Bank will get your batteries full fast. You can find Ridge's power bank at Best Buy, or get 10% off by going to ridge.com and using code COMMAND at checkout. Again, that's ridge.com with code COMMAND at checkout.
Greetings, humans. You have entered the Command Zone, your destination for all aspects of Elder Dragon Highlander. Enjoy your stay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Command Zone podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Weeks.
I'm your host, Jimmy Wong.
Today, we are talking about mass disruption.
Yeah, this used to be called mass removal, but that has now changed to mass disruption. This is a class of cards that should go in every deck and that majorly impact the game in a wider swath. And set your opponents back to the Stone Age.
Yeah, so we'll go through, we'll tell you what it is, how much you should have, and what kind of things check the box for mass disruption and you should be looking out for when you're building your decks. But let's get into it. Let's start with just, what is it?
Yeah, so again, like I said before, we used to call this mass removal, and we typically would just think, oh, Wrath of God. But mass disruption is disrupting your opponents, and I think it's a better term overall, and similarly, like card draw versus just card advantage. So mass disruption, we now clarify as one card that removes at least 3 other cards.
Yeah. The reason the number is 3 is you have 3 opponents for the most part. So this is when you spend 1 card and you're not technically down a card against the table. You may be against 1 opponent if you focus that on 1 player, but that's the general principle here. This category used to be more specific and it really dealt with just like blowing up all this stuff. Yep. But as card design has gotten more specific for Commander, we've gotten a lot of different kinds of disruption that don't necessarily all look alike. Yeah. So this is a more broad category that includes things like board wipes and but also includes things like multi-target removal and even graveyard hate.
Bounce everything of a certain mana value.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
So we introduced mass disruption in the new deck building template episode, and we talk a little bit about it there, but we're going to go into a lot more detail today. Yeah. So
that episode, by the way, one of the best episodes we've ever released.
Oh, thank you.
I will say. So you should definitely check it out. It's the reason I play 38 Gulp lands in all my decks now. And I haven't had mana problems in what feels like over a year.
Yeah.
I guess since the episode released.
It's so if you're asking yourself what qualifies as mass disruption, we're going to answer a lot of those questions today. But the broad principle is this card in my deck to mess up what my opponents are doing?
Yes, disrupting them is part of the name.
If they're here, like if they're winning the game this way, this card prevents them from getting there.
Yeah.
Is it a card that defends what I am doing, that protects like my game plan? That's something different. That's protection. We would put that under the plan category because it's not disrupting what your opponents are doing. Because their plan isn't likely to just remove all your stuff.
Right.
Their plan is to do something proactive, and you're protecting your stuff from disruption. So protection is sort of a different thing. And if it's a card that is there to further your strategy, to make you closer to winning the game, that goes under the plan category and is not something we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah. And of course, there are modal spells. There are cards that do multiple things. But in general, mass disruption is you're disrupting what your opponents are doing. You're moving or dealing with at least 3 things. So bounce is included as well as removal, as exile, etc.
Counterspells. There's a lot. Yeah, disruption comes in a lot of different forms, especially these days.
Yep.
So the next question is, why play mass disruption over targeted disruption or at all?
Yeah, so in the early days of Commander, we always would talk about how getting a 6-for-1, a 10-for-1 with the Wrath of God or a board wipe was one of the best things you could ever do because it just dealt with, and there are oftentimes that a board wipe or a board clear or a selected removal of a certain thing is the only way out of certain situations. And it's different notably than targeted disruption. While they're both good, you need a mix of both. So targeted disruption is great for instant speed interruption, getting rid of one thing when someone tries to equip something, going to attack you for the lethal, or just deal with that one problematic piece.
Yeah.
And so
these are important. They're counter spells, they're swords to plowshares. They're usually stuff that prevents you from dying or somebody else from winning.
Yeah, and it's one thing.
Yeah.
So it's good at usually setting one player back. Very rarely will a single targeted disruption piece get rid of something that benefits everyone unless it's like a coat of arms or something.
And then this is usually like targeted disruption is more for setting specific players back, and it's usually more of a tempo thing. So it's like, I want to slow you down, I want to stop this individual play, but they are card disadvantage. You spend one card to answer one of your opponent's cards. Your other two opponents are up cards.
Yes.
Not to mention that a lot of targeted disruption in Commander gives them something in replaces it. So like Path to Exile, you spend one card to answer one card, but they also get an additional card.
Right.
And you're down against the other two opponents. So that in terms of like card efficiency isn't very good. But mass disruption is much more efficient because you're spending one card to answer multiple cards.
Yeah, and you'll typically find that individual targeted disruption comes with a political deal making. Hey, if I deal with this, will you guys just not hurt me or do anything for at least a little bit? Whereas mass disruption, because it hits a little bit of everyone, is very rarely comboed with like a, hey, let's make a deal about this.
Right.
Unless it's one person is so far in advance that this is the only thing that the rest of us are going to save our lives.
That's the other big thing about mass disruption is targeted disruption is a speed bump. Mass disruption is a reset.
Yeah.
So being able to answer a ton of things at once can majorly impact the tempo of the game in a way that can totally swing things.
Yeah.
It's much more dynamic in terms of if it's good, it's great, and if it's bad, it probably isn't going to get cast. So it's a little bit more of that, but it can save you from the brink of disaster. It can also push you over the top to a victory.
Yeah, mass disruption is different than targeted disruption, and also that mass disruption kind of has two categories in being one set of board wipes or board clears or mass disruption, and then mass disruption that hits everyone. So that's why Cyclonic Rift is so good. That's why any of the bounce all of your opponent's stuff versus your own Flood of Tears type dealio is also very powerful.
Yeah.
But single targeted disruption doesn't really have that as a sort of like subcategory.
But it's cheaper. It's usually more instant speed. It's more flexible, that kind of thing. So there's upsides and downsides to both of them. But making sure that you're actually checking this mass disruption box is a big deal. And the thing that I want to get across today is that mass disruption doesn't always have to be a board wipe.
Yes.
It can look very different depending on what your deck is doing. Maybe you have different ways to answer a lot of cards than other decks because that's how your deck functions. So, before we get into the nitty gritty, I want to talk about how many pieces of mass disruption you should play on average. This is pulled directly from the deck building template. If you haven't watched that episode, please go watch it. We put a lot of work into it. But the recommendation from that episode is you should have 6 pieces of mass disruption in your 100 card deck.
Yeah, and this doesn't mean just 6 Wrath of Gods.
Yes.
It gets more detailed than that, and hopefully some of these spells also do double duty as other cards.
Yeah, and typically this number is going to fluctuate a little bit. If you're a slower deck, I would say you probably want more mass disruption because you need to make sure that when your opponents were developing in the early game, you can answer that. And if you're a faster game, maybe you have less mass disruption and more targeted disruption because you need to be more efficient and you probably don't have to answer a lot of threats if you're doing better in the early game.
Yeah. And so if you're going to break down the 6 into different categories, subcategories of what they deal with, we recommend that 3 of the 6 master disruption spells hit creatures specifically.
So this can be a board wipe. This can be propaganda. This can be any number of things that say creatures right now are less of a problem for me.
Yep. And of course, creatures being the most common way games are won in Commander is also why we're recommending 3. And then 1 to 2 that disrupt specifically artifacts / enchantments. And then I guess like a very small slash planeswalkers if that happens to be a dealio.
Yep.
Oftentimes, like killing a bunch of enchantments is one of the only ways certain decks are dismantled. So that I found that enchantment removal and artifact removal a little bit less so become more important recently.
Yeah, enchantments in particular are pretty good against targeted disruption because they have a lot of the hexproof stuff and Shroud.
Yeah.
So having something that takes care of all of them is huge.
Yeah, and certain colors are just not good at dealing with enchantments either.
Right. And finally, you need 1 to 2 that disrupt graveyards. So this can be as simple as a Bojuka Bog or the desert one.
The desert one.
Everybody knows it's on screen. I'm sorry. I was going to say Nesting Grounds, and that's just a different colorless.
A cursed desert of the cursed? I don't know. It's a desert.
You guys know.
It's dry.
They're screaming at the screen. To something that shuffles graveyards into the library, just something that is a bit of a tempo hit to graveyard decks that can be so powerful and difficult to deal with otherwise.
Yeah, even a time spiral kind of counts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then this is something that you can adjust and keep in mind based on what your deck is. Like if you're playing a Spellslinger deck, then you're probably most concerned about creature decks. So you maybe have more of your mass disruption is targeted towards dealing with a lot of creatures. Rather because you have a lot of targeted disruption for spells. But if you're a heavy creature deck, maybe you're less worried about creatures because you have the board presence to sort of handle that in other ways. So you want to make sure you have more answers for artifacts and enchantments that are a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, and then of course also based on your meta, if there's a lot of enchantment decks, artifact decks, etc., pack your deck with what needs to happen.
Yeah, and if you're going to pack your deck, you can support our channel.
Please.
By shopping using our affiliate link at cardkingdom.com/command. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of Magic cards, and more, I just love having one place that I can go to, put a huge list of cards in, and get a ton of them in one place. They have like an advanced deck building tool that is incredible if you're building a deck. You can paste like 50 cards in there and go through and pick the version all on the same screen. It's really fast.
Convenient.
You pay shipping once. Honestly, as I've like played more and more, I am like so much happier just to be able to get everything that I need from a place that I trust.
Yeah.
And I know that they're going to show up on my doorstep packaged well. They're going to be safe. They're going to be in the right condition, the right version, all of that. So we trust Card Kingdom. We love them over here. And if you use our affiliate link, you're supporting the show without spending any additional mana or money. Real life.
Definitely no mana. Yeah.
You're not spending any mana.
I guess
at
your
Card
mana
Kingdom.
is just like the energy you have.
Yeah. What do you suppose is the transfer?
I don't know.
Of like how much
One
mana?
cup of coffee is a dark ritual.
Sure, yeah.
Especially if it's black or a cold brew.
I'm going to send a lot of coffee to Card Kingdom.
Yeah, there you go.
Use our affiliate link at cardkingdom.com/command.
And one thing that cannot get affected by board wipes are your card sleeves and the ways you protect your cards outside of the game itself. So go to
Protect them from coffee.
Yeah. Go to ultrapro.com/command. Heaven forbid you ever have coffee spilled on your playmat. I spilled coffee on my keyboard a couple of weeks ago.
Nice.
That was the worst. Don't do that. Ultrapro.com/command, though, however, has your stuff protected from deck boxes to sleeves, and also the accessories you need to make your game state represented with the ability counter dice, if they're in stock.
They're
so
really nice.
valuable.
They're really nice.
They also have wall scrolls. They also have ways to hang your playmat up on your wall. Also, like the cool one-touch card protectors that you can put a little card that's your favorite on your desk.
Yeah,
It's behind us. Yeah, we have Josh Lee Kwai always leering behind us as the monarch. Looking super sweet and suave. Ultrapro.com/command. They're coming up with the best products all the time. Apex sleeves we love. The Mana 8 line we always love to sign at MagicCons. And it just looks so nice to have like one of those cool deck boxes with just the right color on it. It's an amazing way to sort and get your collection up to date in terms of being nice and tidy and organized. Ultrapro.com/command.
And finally, you can support us directly by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/commandzone. Our patrons are the best. We get to hang out with them in a Discord all the time. Plus, they get access to game nights and extra turns a day early without ads.
Nice.
It's pretty nice. You get to just cruise through it like you're watching a movie. And at certain tiers, you get access to exclusive content like Turn Talk. We've got some very cool, wacky extra turns coming around the bend, and the Turn Talks for those episodes are really fun and interesting. So if you haven't signed up already, sign up at that tier and you get access to those discussions. They're very off the cuff. They're really fun.
Yeah.
You'll learn a lot from them. Plus, we shout out one lucky patron every single podcast episode. And this one is dedicated to Noah Bose. Noah, you rock.
You rock. All right, back into mass disruption. Let's talk about the types of mass disruption. And the first is the one that we have talked about the most. It's board wipes. So single spells that remove all or most of a specific permanent type. Sometimes not. Sometimes it just says all non-land permanents.
Yep.
So it's more than one. But typically, the thing that we talk about is your Wrath of God. So again, these can be symmetrical or asymmetrical. So either all everything or everything that's not yours, or even sometimes just one opponent. And it can be bounce form, exile, destruction, damage, -1/-1 counters, -1/-1, or -X/-X.
Yeah.
But in terms of creature board wipes, Wrath of God is your favorite.
Yeah, that's the classic.
Normal. Yeah, the regeneration clause never mattered. I don't think it's ever mattered.
Look, as someone with the Lord of Tressorhorn deck, it does.
That does,
sometimes matter.
Yeah, sometimes your mono green player will go, no, I can regenerate.
Oh, no, my Thrun.
Yeah, but every color has a good version of this, so we're going to mention one in each of the colors right now.
Yeah, so Wrath of God is your classic destruction one. Toxic Deluge is probably the most common in terms of -X/-X wipes. Blasphemous Act is the most common damage-based wipe. And it typically takes care of all the creatures unless you've got a particularly powerful +1 counters deck at your table.
Yep.
Raise the Palisade is a good example of a bounce wipe that can be asymmetrical. It's getting more and more popular all the time.
Actually, there is no green one, I realized.
Yeah.
Green is not great at creature-based removal board wipes.
They have some, but they're definitely not going to handle the entire table, and they tend to be very inefficient. So green decks, like we said before, are creature decks typically, so they're less worried about disrupting all the creatures at the table because they have the biggest ones. So the other colors are really good at handling a lot of creatures, but green is actually better at handling non-creature permanents.
Yes.
So those are another kind of board wipe that you could look at. That's like a Bane of Progress is a great example of a green
non-creature based
board wipe. Doesn't handle battles or planeswalkers. But, it handles the big ones.
How many sets till battles return? I think I still have only seen a battle in play like once or twice.
I put a battle in play a few times.
It actually was from me at one time.
I've got 2 battles I play.
Yeah, but green's not the only color that can deal with non-creature permanents. Red has Vandal Blast, which is an asymmetrical way to deal with every artifact you don't control, which is very good.
Vandal Blast is actually a really nice one because it's both targeted and mass disruption. So, and when we built our template, we built it so it works if you put it in both categories.
Yeah, Cyclonic Rift as well, obviously.
Cyclonic Rift as well. Another blue one that I think is a little underrated in this category is Filter Out.
Oh,
This one does handle battles. This 1 blue for an instant, return all non-creature, non-land permanents to their owner's hand, and it's an instant.
3 mana, too.
It's efficient. It is a huge blowout, especially for like treasure or clue decks that have been stockpiling tokens. Filter Out has been really sweet in my games.
Yeah. 1 blue, though, so a little bit restrictive on the mana.
Yeah.
And of course, we get modal board wipes. So these are oftentimes considered the most powerful because you get to choose which parts of it you want to use. Farewell being the most infamous now, which is a sorcery, to either you choose 1 or more to exile all artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or graveyards. So
nice. Checks a lot of boxes.
Yeah. And of course, if you are an artifact deck, you love this. If you're a creature deck, you love this too because you can choose the other things. And boy, Farewell is so powerful. Before that, the sort of big bad in this category was Austere Command.
Yeah, I still play it.
Yeah, I still play it too because you often find that decks that have, destroy all creatures with mana value 4 or greater, or destroy all creatures with mana value 3 or less, destroy all artifacts or all enchantments, but you only get to choose 2.
Yeah.
But sometimes that's enough.
It's nice. Yeah, that flexibility costs you a little bit more. These are less efficient board wipes. So if you're the kind of deck that, like you're a slower deck, you're a controlling deck, having these big expensive board wipes is actually not great because you want to cast your board wipes in the early game after everybody's built and then cast your big haymakers in the later game.
Yeah.
But if you're a more aggressive deck and you put stuff on the battlefield in the early game, having these modal ones are a lot better because you can dodge a lot of your setup. So that's similar to like Raise the Palisades, that kind of thing. Having more one-sided board wipes is better if you are a more proactive deck in the early game.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I love Austere Command.
So I think that is how people picture mass disruption the most. That's a very clear one. And another one that is a little bit is more clear but gets a little fuzzy in people's head is multi-target removal spells.
Yeah.
So these are removal spells that you can blow up a ton of things at once. Either they're X spells, or they target multiple things, or they target one from each opponent. All of these would check the box for me as mass disruption, as long as they're hitting 3 or have the ability to hit 3 or more
things.
Cards.
Yeah, the oldest and the funniest still to me is Decimate.
Ugh.
So destroy target artifact, creature, target enchantment, and target land. However, you can't cast the spell unless you have legal targets for all 4 choices.
Need all the targets.
Need all the targets. Sometimes this card is just absolutely dead, but more and more often I think it's actually kind of come back into favor because again, there's just so many options. There are more enchantment creatures than before as well.
Sagas.
Sagas, artifact creatures. So there's just ways for you to make sure that you can get all 4 of these.
I love a Decimate. I know there's downsides to it, but I usually find the targets that I need for a Decimate.
And blowing up the land is also a card, an effect that very rarely people play as often as you know other types of removal in their decks, I've found. So having that option actually can be very good.
And I know this card really looks like targeted disruption because it says target a lot. But because it's sorcery speed, because it's a little bit more expensive, and because it does so many things, for me, this is a perfect example of mass disruption that is you're spending 1 card to answer a lot of them. Another one that I think more people should play is Dismantling Wave.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
2 and a white for a sorcery. For each opponent, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls.
2 and a white.
It also has cycling for 6 white. When you cycle this card, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. I'll be honest, I've only seen that happen once, and it was enormous. It was a crazy blowout.
Yeah, but 8 mana is a very steep cost.
That's a very steep cost.
Unless you're playing like a cycling deck that can reduce those costs as well.
Most of the time, this is just going to be a huge tempo hit. It's going to set a bunch of people back while you get to keep pressing forward. It's very efficient for removal that hits multiple things.
Yeah, another piece that I really like is a card that also doubles as protection and a plan card, as well as removal, mass removal, disruption. It's March of Swirling Mist. This is one of your X spells, so X in the blue. As an additional cost to cast a spell, you can exile any number of blue cards in your hand, and it'll pay for 2 less to cast for each card exiled this way, so you can cheapen it in other ways. But more importantly, up to X target creatures phase out. So instant speed, get rid of attackers, get rid of blockers. On someone else's turn, just shut them down entirely if they're trying to assemble a combo with untappers and all that sort of stuff. Very powerful. March of
Swirling Mist is awesome. When it's in your hand, you're like, okay, I could remove one thing. I could protect my whole board. I could remove their whole board. You can make a deal with somebody else to be like, hey, if you attack them, I'll phase out all their blockers and I'll attack them too. That's a huge swing and shows how powerful the flexibility can be there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people look at this and don't see it as disruption because you're like, it's protection, it's temporary, like it comes back. But the tempo hit on this is so powerful and can swing the game in such a dominant way that March absolutely would check the box for me for mass disruption.
Yeah, and that often can be also the one thing you need to just stop someone from winning, which is often very necessary in types of games, specifically combo-y games.
Multi-target removal feels a lot like one-sided wraths.
Yeah.
Especially if they scale up in that way, you build around with some sort of synergy in mind. Because they can completely swing the tempo of the game, which is, I think, one of the major defining qualities of a mass disruption spell.
Yeah, and these are often more mana efficient as well, although obviously with your Blasphemous Axe and Toxic Delusions out there, 3 mana does seem like a powerful place to be.
That's true.
They're just a little bit less effective, but I've actually found that in certain spots when you don't want your board to get wrecked as well, these can be so good. And these you can also turn into political moves quite easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next category is repeatable removal.
Yeah, this is not a category that if I was to describe it would come up with on my own. So I'm glad you did here because it's a very important and interesting way to look at mass disruption.
Yeah, so these are spells that can reliably and repeatedly disrupt other people's spells or permanents. They're usually permanents themselves. There are some like constant mists you can like keep buying back.
Sure.
I guess that's like repeatable disruption. But most of the time, these are permanents that lean into the synergy of your deck while disrupting your opponents. So I think like one of the clearest examples of this is Royal Assassin.
Yeah.
We don't play a ton of it anymore, but it's a good idea, a good example of what I'm talking about. So this is 1 black for a human assassin. It's a 1/1 that taps to destroy target tapped creature.
Classic Magic card.
Yeah. If you untap with this, you can destroy one thing. And if you untap with it again, you can destroy multiple things.
If you have untappers, do it more than once, obviously.
Typically, you're not playing this in a deck that doesn't have untappers or doesn't have ways to really like fork the ability or lean into the synergy of this. But it's a permanent that does so much more than just like a murder does in the right spot, that it can feel like mass disruption, even though it sort of smells like targeted disruption.
And there is a world too where people specifically don't attack with creatures or activate them because a Royal Assassin is on the table. So disruption also works in terms of being able to quote unquote soft remove a creature by just not having it in action as a result of another card existing.
Absolutely. A lot of cards in this category are threat of activation cards.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, I can't do this because you'll just do this.
Yeah.
And so it means that it disrupts more cards than you would expect than just the one card it removes.
Yeah. Cards like Goblin Bombardment fit into this category really well because this also prevents players from playing things out of their hands, which is really funny. So many times Goblin Bombardment is out there or an Aura Shards is on the battlefield and I'm like, well, I'm just not playing 3 of these cards in my hand because I know that they will be immediate targets for this. So in a way, it's countered the spell before I've even cast it.
Yeah, those kind of effects are really powerful and they're often synergistic with what the deck is doing. Like Goblin Bombardment is a sack outlet and is mass disruption.
Yeah.
Mayhem Devil rewards you when you sacrifice things and is mass disruption because when anybody sacrifices a permanent, you can deal 1 damage to any target. So you can pick off little things, you can stockpile abilities and kill a lot of things if you work together. You can go face. Like this flexibility makes these cards mass disruption because they do so much more than one single instant in your hand.
Yeah, Mayhem Devil and Aura Shards are triggered, whereas the first 2 are activated abilities. And of course, there's also a Hullbreaker Horror, which is an absolute horror to play against.
Yeah!
This is mass disruption, but it's spread out, again, similarly to Royal Assassin type effects. But yeah, whenever you cast a spell, you can choose either to return another spell you don't control to your opponent's hand or a non-land permanent. So you can bounce things on the board or let it be sort of a counterspell where people just don't cast the spell. It gets cast, but it goes right back to their hand. They have to pay for it again.
Yeah. So you can see how all of these cards can handle multiple cards in your opponent's hands without you sort of putting additional cards into it.
Yeah.
Or if you're putting additional cards into it, like a Hullbreaker Horror or a Mayhem Devil, it's also serving your overall plan.
Yeah.
So they're synergistic removal pieces that sort of take your plan and turn it into mass disruption.
Yeah.
They're very powerful.
As you execute your plan, your opponents are getting affected by it in more than one instance. And so it's mass disruption, but kind of spread out, pulled out like Gumby.
Mass disruption, it comes in a lot of forms. There's a lot of different ways to look at it and think about it. We've got a lot more corner cases that we're going to get to. But before that, I'm curious what your favorite mass disruption spell is. I find this category has a lot of pet cards for people, a lot of things that you lean on really heavily. So throw those in the comments. We want to hear what spells you're using to keep your opponents at bay. But before we get into the next couple of categories, we've got to hear a few words from our sponsors.
Hello, everyone. I am the Black Goblin. But when you add a sticker to me, I become Mind Goblin. Which leads me to the question, Mind Goblin these delicious meals from HelloFresh? Of course you don't, because HelloFresh brings you comforting, chef-designed recipes with fresh, seasonal ingredients delivered right to your door. Personally, I'm always happy, Goblin. They're honey barbecue pulled chicken sandwiches, but HelloFresh has a giant menu with over 100 options to choose from. They have tasty steak and seafood options at no extra cost, with new seasonal produce each week. Plus, HelloFresh helps you eat healthier with high-protein options and new, greener recipes, which include 2 or more veggies. In fact, these meals are so veggie-packed, I could even become Green Goblin!
There he is! Get him, boys!
No! Marvel lawyers!
The best way to cook just got better. Go to HelloFresh.com/command10FM now to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life. 1 per box with active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's HelloFresh.com/command10FM to get 10 free meals plus a free item for life. You know what's great about Ristic Study?
I think so.
All the quick and easy payments.
Exactly. Wait, what?
Do you pay the one? Yes. Simple. The only way to make payments quicker and easier would be with our sponsor, Square.
Ah, now I get it.
Square Square is the business tool that simplifies your day-to-day with sleek point-of-sale hardware and helpful behind-the-scenes tools. So customers can check out faster than you can say, do you pay the $1.99? A bunch of our favorite nearby restaurants use Square, and I always appreciate how it keeps the lunch rush moving. And it's designed for any sort of business, from a one-location shop or a booth at a MagicCon to an entire multi-store franchise. You can take payments at a kiosk, counter, website, or even on your phone, all synced in real time. Plus, Square has built-in marketing and loyalty tools to keep you in touch with your customers and reward them for coming back to buy another day.
Wow, sounds like Square might just be a game changer.
Puns! With Square, you get all the tools to run your business with none of the contracts or complexity.
And why wait? Right now, you can get up to $200 off Square hardware at square.com/go/command. That's SQUARE.com/GO/command.
Run your business smarter with Square. Get started today.
Run! We're being chased by a charging monstrosaur!
Oh wow, how's it charging in the middle of the jungle?
It's got a rich power bank!
Cool! With the rich power bank, it can charge its phone, Apple Watch, and headphones, all from the same convenient device. It's got 5-in-1 charging with built-in cables.
Wow!
Man, that seems way easier than carrying a bunch of cords around with you, especially with those tiny arms.
Help, it's got haste!
Obviously, with 20 watts of power, it charges your phone fast, and there's enough capacity for 3 full charges. It even has MagSafe compatible wireless charging, so you can keep it magnetically attached to the back of your iPhone for extra juice all the time. With free shipping, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty, it's the last power bank you'll ever need.
Oh, nice.
See? It lasted that guy's whole lifetime.
One thing to pack, 5 ways to power. You can find Ridge's power bank at Best Buy, or our listeners can get 10% off at ridge.com by using code COMMAND at checkout. Just head to ridge.com and use code COMMAND and you're all set. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support the Command Zone and tell them our show sent you.
Aha! Psych Rift. Yeah, this deck feels like a 3.
Updating your decks?
No, I'm just sorting them into commander brackets.
Oh, just use ARCHIDEKT. It's the easiest way to get an estimate of your deck's bracket. Plus, you can click the number and it'll lay out the reasoning. It takes things like tutors, extra turns, and land destruction into account, and game changers are all clearly marked. It even recognizes 2-card combos. See? It's saying your deck is actually a 4. It'll be a 3 if you've got Rhystic Study.
Huh. Okay, 4 it is.
ARCHIDEKT is the best place to browse, brew, and check your deck's commander brackets. Just go to archidekt.com/commandzone to get started.
That's ARCHIDEKT.com/command-zone.
Welcome back, everybody. We are talking about mass disruption, whereas specifically the types of mass disruption. So when you see it in your deck, you're able to properly identify it. And this next one is similar to sort of repeatable removal. I feel like you know it when you feel it, when you play against it. It's Edicts.
Edicts. Ugh. Spells that force each player or opponent to sacrifice creatures, less commonly other permanents. And the controller almost always typically gets to choose what they sacrifice. This is one of the types of mass disruption that can get played early and late, depending on the board state, and has an enormous effect oftentimes, I found. Almost backbreaking in a lot of cases as well. When people think that they're protected, they're okay after a board wipe, boom, an Edict slams down and it is just doubly game over.
Yeah, so these are really interesting. They're sort of less effective disruption than the like repeatable removal or multi-target removal, because you don't get to pick what dies, but they're usually cheaper and they're usually easily repeated.
Yeah, because they're on a creature that you can flicker or reanimate, like a Cursed Marauder. When there's a battlefield, each player sacrifices a non-token creature.
That non-token clause will get you every time.
That part is actually, because a lot of, like the older edicts are just sacrifices a creature, so people that had tokens were like, no prob, goodbye 1/1. Stay around, Commander.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, yeah.
There's also big, powerful edicts like Soul Shatter that are 2 and a black for an instant. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker with the highest converted mana cost among creatures and planeswalkers they control.
Yeah.
This one says that, like, look, I don't get to pick what the biggest one is, but I know I'm going to get something that you've invested a lot in.
Yeah, so it can feel pretty targeted in that way, but again, every single player doing it, oftentimes it's the commander or like their Hullbreaker Horror type thing.
Yeah, so those can feel even more powerful, and that kind of disruption is a very serious tempo blow to your opponents.
Yeah, and then of course there are the game ender edicts like Torment of Hailfire, which gives everyone a choice to either sack a non-land permanent or discard a card or lose 3 life, oftentimes when X is equal to 10+. This is just the game for people.
Yeah. is like sometimes where you'll play against a Torment of Hailfire and they'll just slam it for 3, and even that can end the game on the spot where you're like, I guess I discard 2 cards and take 3, but like that is a huge blowout for your opponents. So it's those kind of effects, I think, are what people think of when you think of edicts. Either that, or they think specifically of repeatable permanent-based edicts like Grave Pact.
Yeah, this is just probably the least played card in my entire collection. I used to play this all the time, and then I realized how miserable it was to play against. Whenever creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature.
Yeah, this is exactly the kind of disruption we were talking about before. It's repeatable removal, but it's more effective than that.
Yeah.
Because you have so much control over your creatures sacrificing, that's in your plan, that you can repeatedly disrupt each of your opponents as you further your plan. And it can feel just completely crumpling.
Yep. And this is another one that stops players from actively playing out their hands because they know that if, for instance, they're just they rely on their commander and that's the only creature to be out, they just can't play it in the face of a Grave Pact.
Not particularly fun to play against, but very powerful and give you a good idea for what Mass Disruption is.
Yeah, the new version of this is Sothera the Super Void, which is also a reanimation spell kind of at the end of it, which is kind of crazy. Liliana Dreadhorde General is a planeswalker that comes down and then just -4 to immediately make each player sacrifice 2 creatures of their choice. And it's card draw because whenever a creature you control dies, draw a card.
Yeah.
Static ability.
This card is backbreaking. It draws cards, it makes bodies, it's huge Mass Disruption moment in the game. If you're playing Liliana and you aren't immediately slamming that -, you are not getting full advantage out of this card.
Yeah.
But this is... If you've played against Liliana, you understand that this is not the kind of card that you can leave on the battlefield.
Yeah, and everyone will try and kill it as well.
Well, they just lost 2 creatures, so it'll be a little harder.
And she's still at 2 loyalty, but...
Finally, something like Rankle, Master of Pranks, which says when he deals combat damage, each player discards a card, loses life and draws, or each player sacrifices a creature.
And you get to choose any number.
This is a couple of different disruption pieces. Disruption from the hand, you're forcing players to discard, and of course, sacrificing creatures on the battlefield. Those kind of things can be backbreaking for certain decks, and definitely count as Mass Disruption because you can do it multiple times, and you're getting 3 creatures each turn.
Yeah, so Edicts, very powerful, especially when they're in the right decks. They're not great in every type of deck. And because they're less effective at answering the most powerful thing or the thing that you need to get answered on the board or dealing with everything at once.
Yeah, less accuracy, but more quantity here.
Yeah, and very efficient.
Yeah.
2 mana for the Accursed Marauder is very, very good, especially on those early turns. Again, everyone just plays out their mana dork, their little utility piece. They think no one's ever going to waste single target removal on this, and no one's going to play a board wipe this early in the game. But Edicts get you there.
Pretty good.
Yep.
All right, moving on to Mass Goad.
Goad, yes.
Or, of course, Repeatable Goad.
Yeah, Repeatable Goad. Goad, in general, is a somewhat new ability or effect that makes creatures be forced to attack, which means they're being tapped down, potentially running into blockers that they can't survive against, and they can attack everyone but the player that goaded them.
Yeah, these have a similar effect to board wipes on the game because they say, hey, all these creatures, cool, I love all these creatures. They're your problem now.
Yeah.
I get a turn where I don't have to worry about them because I know what they're doing. Goad is certainly a disruptive strategy. It's a control strategy. So when you deploy this kind of card, especially if you deploy them on the right turn, like finding exactly the right turn to nail a Disrupt Decorum can win you the game.
Yeah, it also just contributes to the other part of winning you the game, which is killing your opponents.
Yeah.
Which is great too, because the player that gets goaded first with the Disrupt Decorum is the one that's going to be attacked the most easily, because after that turn, if they haven't played that much else, then all their board is tapped down.
Yeah, this is a pretty tough one. And there's a lot of these kind of effects that are running around now. Goad is very popular and only getting more prevalent. Baloth Baratil Entertainer.
Yeah, this card's crazy.
Is wild. It's 4 and a red. It says creatures your opponents control with power less than Baloth's power, which is 2, are goaded.
Yeah,
so
perma-goaded.
All the little stuff, just goaded.
Yeah.
Has to attack, can't attack you. And that kind of stuff, you can feel that impact in the game because you know you have less agency than you did a moment ago.
Yeah, Death Kiss, a very powerful, interesting card. 5 and a red for a 5/5. Whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks on your opponents, it doubles its power until end of turn, which is very good with Goad because you can monstrous this for XX in red. So you will make X target creatures your opponents control goaded. So pretty good at just slam it on some flyers, put at least 2 or 3 into X to really have this impact the board. And boy, oh boy, they are going to be hurting.
Yeah. And repeatable Goad, like we mentioned, something like a Bothersome Quasit is one of my favorites to put in a deck. This says, goaded creatures your opponent's control can't block, which is huge. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, goad target creature an opponent controls. This is a huge amount of disruption because you're like, all right, I'll goad that big thing and I'll goad your board so you can't block it. Uh-oh. That is bothersome indeed.
Yeah, I love the cute cat on this art too. I always forget
in the
that.
background.
She's being goaded, right?
Yeah.
Is the idea.
Drink this milk by a Quasit.
Yeah, you can't block.
Yeah, so those kind of cards are great for just throwing a wrench into a game.
Yeah, Alayla, Cunning Conqueror, does it by having fairies deal combat damage to a player to go to target creature that player controls, which again fuels her ability to keep hitting you with those fairies turn after turn.
Yeah.
Very good, very powerful. Goad is very annoying. I found a lot of players I've talked to actually really don't like this mechanic. Because it appears so often and everywhere. But it's one of those things where it's a temporary fix most often, unless it's Baloth Baratil.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about stuff that will remove cards or will phase them out or will exile them, make sure that they're gone. But I want to think about disruption in terms of tempo plays as well. And I do think that Goad really checks that box. One of my frustrations with the last template that we put out was there wasn't a good box for cards like Goad that I wanted to play, and I didn't really know. So I was just sort of calling them board wipes, even though I knew that wasn't really what they were.
Yeah.
And having this mass disruption category, knowing that that's a little bit more flexible, means that like if I have 1 or 2 Goad effects in my red deck that's like super creature heavy, I maybe don't need 2 Wraths.
Yeah.
Because I have multiple ways to disrupt creatures, and I know that if I cast a board wipe, I'm going to really impact what's on my own battlefield.
Yeah, and as Commander format, it just slowly grows faster and faster. Games are ending on turn 7 and 8 as opposed to 9 and 10. Then a tempo-based play with Goad that is only a 1-turn problem fixer kind of do feel much more powerful because the game itself is shorter, so that 1 turn matters more.
Yeah, the window for winning the game in Commander feels like it's between turn 6 and 9.
Yeah.
So if you can land a big mass disruption spell somewhere in that range, you can really dominate the game. And I think Goad is a good example of that kind of spell with that isn't necessarily just a Wrath of God.
Yeah.
Similar to Goad, this next category.
This next category is very similar. Yeah, we're talking about fogs. And these are, again, ways to sometimes bait your opponents into doing something that they think is going to end the game, but you have just the right thing to just get out of it. So fogs are specifically spells that prevent damage, either in combat or even outside of combat. Or prevent you from taking damage in some way.
I think one of the most famous, most played mass disruption spells in this category is, of course, Teferi's Protection.
Yeah.
This says, like, cool, go off, king. You can't hurt me.
Yeah. Very effective.
All this stuff that you're doing, that's wonderful. I'm going to go and let you do it.
Yeah.
I think that really solidified the mass disruption thing for me, was like, oh, that's why Teferi's Protection feels like that.
Yeah.
It has the same effect where if you land it at the opportune time, you've basically blanked a turn, you've blanked a lot of resources. And that's why fogs feel like mass disruption, because when you're making a big alpha strike in Commander, you've committed an overrun effect. You've committed a lot of creatures to the board to try and untap and win this turn. You've put your back into this, and if we say, like, I spend 1 card to stop all that and buy myself a whole nother turn
and make everyone want to kill you then instead,
it impacts a lot of pieces on your opponent's board.
Yeah, you can consider removal also like, hey, I made all your creatures tap down, which are cards that are mass disruption, but in
Tangle.
Protection,
Tangle's my favorite.
But Teferi's Protection allows you to wait until your opponent has committed resources to the board. It could be an overrun plus this, and then finally this last effect from this Planeswalker or whatever tap all my creatures, play Teferi's Protection. You've essentially now countered several spells and tapped down their entire board. So you've removed quote unquote things or disrupted things in a very, very powerful way.
Fogs don't always look exactly the same. I think Obscuring Haze is one that you would see a lot. It's prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures your opponents control.
And cast it for free if you don't have a commander out. Wow!
Pretty nice. So what I like about Obscuring Haze is it shuts down combat damage and non-combat damage. So if you're going off with Niv Mizzet or something like that, Obscuring Haze says, no, you're not.
Bye-bye.
But so it's a little bit more flexible there. More often it'll probably be combat damage.
Yeah.
But there's also fogs that have sort of bigger impacts on the game, like Take the Bait.
Yeah, this card's hilarious.
Yeah.
You only cast it during an opponent's turn and during combat, but it stops all combat dealt to you and planeswalkers, and then you give them an extra combat, basically, and all their creatures are now goaded.
Yep.
So even the creatures that didn't attack have to attack now. So if they only sent a few at you, being like, oh, maybe you're holding up an Obscuring Haze, well, guess what? Now all their creatures have to attack, and they have to go at someone else.
Mm-hmm. And
hilarious.
they still get that first hit of damage on your opponents.
Yeah, exactly.
So essentially, you give them the extra combat, and which will likely kill your opponents.
Yeah.
And super juice one player that has put a lot of resources into this big attack.
Yeah, hilarious card.
Aetherize is also a card that I think of as a fog. It's not exactly a fog. It says return all attacking creatures to their owner's hands. But because it's so narrow, I wouldn't call Aetherize a board wipe. I would call it's definitely mass disruption. Blue, obviously, not very good at preventing damage.
Yeah.
There's also a fog-like permanence that can really stop you from taking a lot of damage. One that I was talking about in the office recently was Delaying Shield.
This card is so bizarre.
It's so bizarre. It's 3 and a white for an enchantment. It says, if you would be dealt damage, put that many delay counters on Delaying Shield instead. You're like, cute, I take 20, I'll put 20 counters on the Delaying Shield.
See ya.
At the beginning of your upkeep, remove all delay counters from Delaying Shield. For each delay counter removed this way, you lose 1 life unless you pay 1 and a white.
So very good in life gain decks that don't care about removing 3 to 10 whatever counters each upkeep. Very good in flicker decks that can flicker the Delaying Shield and reset it.
Yep. It's also like turns off damage triggers.
Yeah.
It turns off like infect or any kind of alternate damage.
Yeah.
And it buys you to your untap, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm at least going to untap, and in my upkeep, I'm going to have to figure something out. But I have bought myself a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's hilarious. And I can't believe I've never seen this card before.
Look, I got by a Delaying Shield in the in an extra turns with Jim's Lich deck.
Oh,
so check out that's the CAG episode of Extra Turns. It's really good.
Funny.
He put 10,000 counters on it.
Very funny. Or give it to an opponent and have them die to it
if
too.
you can do it on end step, like that's awesome.
Very funny. Solitary Confinement is a similar card that's just to prevent all damage that will be dealt to you, but it does have some downsides where you have to sacrifice Solitary Confinement and let you discard a card at the beginning of your upkeep, and you also skip your draw step, but you also have Shroud. So this is a great card again to like, I'm ready to go, I'm ready to win, I don't need more cards in my hand, I'm okay discarding things. Blam. Solitary Confinement, protect yourself from direct damage or targeted spells to the player, as well as any type of damage prevented to you, and then you can do your thing.
Yeah, this is pretty good at protecting you for one more turn. You're like, if I untap, I've got everything that I need, I'm going to be good. I'm just going to play this for now.
Yeah.
And even if I don't pay the upkeep or whatever, I'm going to be safe from a lot of things.
Yeah.
Finally, one of my favorites is Righteous Aura.
Yeah.
I've talked about this card a few times. It's 1 and a white for an enchantment. It says white, pay 2 life, : the next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent that damage.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how little you have to activate this.
For people to not do stuff
because,
to you.
they'll look at it and be like, you just pay white and you fog all the damage. And you're like, your commander damage doesn't matter. You won't get combat damage triggers on me. Like, it's almost like a ghostly prison as long as you have that white mana open.
Yeah. The only thing about this is that you often have to leave multiple white mana up.
Probably.
So people can go and play around that and go force you to use it. So do have other ways to use your mana in your deck on other people's turns if this is a card that you're playing.
I love it.
But speaking of Ghostly Prison, some of the fogs we talked about kind of feel like these next category of mass disruption, which is defensive permanents.
Yes.
So permanents that are just going to sit there in play, similar to Righteous Aura, but just make you difficult or inconvenient to damage target attack. And oftentimes these, again, do so much more work than you realize because people just don't even think of you as a legal target to attack because they have to pay this extra tax.
You're just too inconvenient.
Yeah, you become invisible a lot of times in combat as a result.
Yep. My favorite is when somebody's like, all right, I attack you for 4, and you're like,
Ghostly Prison.
Ghostly Prison.
And they're like, dang it.
And they're like, all right, I'll attack you for 4. And you're like, aha!
Yeah. No one wants to pay the tax on Ghostly Prison or Propaganda. Both say creatures can't attack you unless they pay 2 mana for each creature that's attacking you.
Yeah. And like Righteous Aura, you just really don't have to pay that. They just really won't pay that.
Yeah.
Because of that, that barrier is there.
2 mana is a lot.
2 mana is a lot, especially in the early game. Like if you're just going in for chip damage, it's going to go somewhere else if they have a Propaganda. One in black that's interesting is No Mercy. It's 2 black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, destroy it.
Wow.
So you still take the damage, but the creature is not going to survive unless you can make it indestructible, or of course kill the player that has the No Mercy in play.
People will not attack you, just in general.
No,
they will lose their stuff unless they're already trying to sacrifice or do whatever. But in that case, they'd rather just sacrifice it and not have it die to a No Mercy.
Yep.
So.
It feels very annoying to lose your creature to a No Mercy. Another permanent I wanted to mention in this category that's similar, but it's less attack-based, is something like Metropolis Reformer that just gives you hexproof.
Yeah.
Having hexproof makes you more difficult to target with like Blood Artist type of effects and like Aetherflux Reservoirs. There's a lot more targeting going on than you think in a single game of Commander. I think these are less common, a little bit more narrow, but if you have a reason to run something like Metropolis Reformer, it can do a ton of work in disrupting what your opponents are trying to do.
Yeah, and if you have a way to pariah this thing up and give it indestructible, whenever it's dealt damage, you gain that much life.
Sick.
Pretty fun.
That's a cool card.
Yeah, it's a cool card.
One of my hotter takes
this is interesting. I do think this is correct, though, in how I've seen this play out in many games.
Is that Baleful Strix is mass disruption. And I think like
Brash Taunter.
Having something in play that says, hey, I have a flying Death Toucher. Anything that comes at me is going to die. It's like a single use No Mercy. It's like one of those things that says like, I'll block. I'll trade my thing for your thing.
Happily.
And nobody really wants to remove a Baleful Strix because you've drawn a card off of it. So unless it gets caught up in a sweeper or it's like they have a clean, like a Goblin Bombardment or something to answer it, Baleful Strix can just send so much damage elsewhere that it feels like mass disruption.
Yeah, and it's bad against token decks that just don't care. They'll swing 31-1s at you.
Right,
but
they'll go around.
Decks that just have a 3-3 and a 4-4, and they're going, well, I'm not just going to throw this away.
This can hold a lot of creatures at bay, and I would say at least 3.
Yeah, and it does so in the early turns, more so in the later games, but that still is, disrupting your opponent's, multiple things on your opponent's board from dealing damage to you.
Yeah, and I think like you could look at it like every Death Toucher is mass disruption, and I think that's sort of an extreme idea. I like that Baleful Strix really has flying. I like that it's so cheap. Like there's a lot of things about this, and a card like Tower Winder is sort of a similar thing that make this sort of uniquely good at protecting you.
Yeah.
But I think Baleful Strix is a good example of a card that you can look at in your deck and be like, how does it actually function in the game?
Yeah.
Like, what is Baleful Strix actually doing for me? And in a ninja deck, it's drawing you cards.
Yeah.
Because you're attacking with it, you're bouncing it, you're playing it again, and drawing more cards. But it can also just be a defensive piece that is there to protect your life total while you're attacking with other things.
Yeah, very powerful card. Brash Taunter fits in that same category. I don't want to attack you because all that damage is for sure coming redirected right back
in my face.
It's not going to go anywhere else. Pretty convinced there.
I wanted to do a quick clarification. Defensive permanents like Privileged Position or even like Lightning Greaves, I wouldn't call these mass disruption because, again, they're protecting your game plan. They're not interrupting what your opponents are doing.
Yeah.
Like Baleful Strix says, you want to attack me? You can't. Privileged Position says, no, I'm going to keep my stuff so I can win.
Yeah. If there was a universal rule in Magic that every player had the ability to target things and destroy them just as a passive non-whenever, then yeah, Lightning Greaves Privileged Position could be considered maybe more in the Mass Disruption, but that spell or ability doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So unless every player in your group is playing the deck that just wants to kill and target things, then you're not really being a Mass Disruption. You're just protecting what's going on.
Yeah. I would call these playing cards.
Yeah.
Because they make your deck work better, not your opponent's deck work less.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about some more commonly known Mass Disruption pieces with Graveyard Hate.
Yeah.
So we'll spend very little time on this. The card's called Scavenger Grounds, by the way.
Yeah, we found it.
We found it's on the
Scavenger Grounds.
It's on the outline, which you can get at patreon.com/commandzone. If you're a patron, you get access to our outlines. So these are just spells or abilities that exile graveyards.
Yep.
Specifically, graveyards of decks that you need or will use multiple parts of their graveyard over the course of a game. They have dredge pieces in there. They have reanimation abilities. Their commander reanimates things like Chainer. So this is Mass Disruption, and that it kills it basically is almost hand removal in a way. It's mass discard in a way, but to exile.
Yeah. I mean, graveyard decks put a lot of energy into filling their graveyard. They play a lot of cards to fill
Just
it up.
to do that, yeah.
So if they've played a Mulch and a Satyr Wayfinder and you remove their graveyard, you've set them back at least 2 cards and taken away access to everything that's in their graveyard, likely stuff they can reanimate. That's the other thing, is it also removes anything that interacts with their graveyard in their hand. At least sets it back. So cards like Bajukabog and Rakdos Charm is a great example of a card that can exile target player's graveyard, great Mass Disruption, destroy target artifact, cool, targeted disruption,
removal,
and then each creature deals 1 damage to its controller. Plan. Rakdos Charm is popular because all of those modes are completely relevant.
Abstergo Entertainment, another one that we like a lot, does a similar thing as well.
One I wanted to mention, because it does this time twister thing that we were talking about, is a card like Blessed Respite is 1 and a green for an instant. Target player shuffles their graveyard into their library, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn.
Nice.
This Graveyard Hate
and a fog
built into 1. Those are 2 really powerful pieces of Mass Disruption, not to mention some kind of like recursion sometimes. It can save you from being milled. So it has like alternate utility there. But the fact that this has 2 pieces of pretty narrow disruption, I think might make Blessed Respite one of the better Mass Disruption spells we're not playing.
People do not see this coming as well.
No, oh my gosh.
Now there are of course permanents that also act as Graveyard Hate. Rest in Peace, when it enters the battlefield, exiles all graveyards and then stops things from entering the graveyard, which is very, very good, and similar to Leyline of the Void, and of course, Dauthi Voidwalker.
Yeah, all of these are huge Mass Disruption
very
pieces.
powerful cards, yeah.
Yeah. So Graveyard Hate also checks the box. It answers multiple cards at once. And finally, we're going to end with a pretty big category that is a little difficult for players to understand. So it's Stax.
Yeah.
And Stax is permanents that deny resources, prevent game actions, or tax your mana.
Yes.
Stax cards make it more difficult for your opponents to play the game.
Yes, and they're very, very annoying, so that's why you don't see them quite as often, but they are Mass Disruption. Solemnity, players can't get counters. Counters can't be put on artifacts, creatures, enchantments, or lands. So in the right metas, this can shut off certain decks and entire strategies, including your own, by the way.
Yeah, this was the first category of Stax cards that I wanted to mention, was just no happen cards.
No happen.
It doesn't happen.
Bye-bye.
Collector Oof, no artifact abilities.
Including mana rocks.
Including treasures.
Yeah. Drannith Magistrate, no commanders. Your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. Also just very effective as play from exile is a much more common and supported strategy now.
Absolutely. Can't cast cards from the graveyard either.
Yep.
These are obviously hugely powerful Mass Disruption spells that can goof all of your opponents at once, which is why they are so powerful as control pieces in Commander. Tax effects are also pretty popular in Commander. Stuff like Aura of Silence is a very rude card.
Yeah. Artifacts and enchantments cost 2 more to cast, and you can just sack it to destroy something as well.
If they do happen to have something on the battlefield, you can also remove that.
Yeah.
Grand Arbiter Augustine IV is a mass disruption commander.
And a ramp spell.
And a ramp spell, which is why he's so powerful. It makes your white and blue spells cost 1 less, and spells your opponents cast cost 1 more. That's why this card feels so disruptive, because you spend 1 card and impact every other card in the game.
Yeah. Now, a question we can ask here are, do cards like Rhystic Study, Esper Sentinel, and Smothering Tithe count as Stax cards / mass disruption, because they do create an option for your opponents to do something and pay mana, otherwise you get an effect from it?
This is a very interesting one. And when it got asked to me online, and I was like, I see what we're saying.
Yeah.
Like, Esper Sentinel can certainly be disruptive in some ways. But I don't think you're putting Esper Sentinel in your deck to be disruptive.
Yes, correct.
I think at the end of the day, when you play Rhystic Study, you play Smothering Tithe, you play Esper Sentinel, they're there to be draw or acceleration.
Yeah.
If you're the kind of playgroup where they always pay the 1, then maybe it goes in the disruption category, and you just know how your opponents respond to cards like that. Then you're like, okay, this is more of a tax effect in my meta.
Yeah.
But I think more likely in Commander, these cards are going to be the other half. They're going to be the card draw. They're going to be the treasure production.
Or it's card draw early and then disruption later on as people begin to be able to pay it for the costs.
Smothering Tithe in particular, because people rarely pay the 2. It might prevent them from casting big draw spells or casting wheels. So there's some amount of disruption going on. But I would say primarily this is there to make you treasures.
Yeah, you can't count on it. Another version of Stax is stuff that makes your opponent's stuff enter the battlefield tapped. So this actually can be very effective, because again, the games are getting shorter, and that 1 turn where they cannot bring in blockers or whatever it is.
No haste.
No haste, yeah. So Urbrask does this, Blind Obedience does this, Thalia, Heretic Cathar does this, also to non-basic lands, which is so powerful, even though a lot of those enter tapped, but sometimes the ones that don't, that you want, like your Stomping Grounds and all that, yikes.
One more question is one that's on the line. It does seem like this is a thing Wizards is doing a lot lately, is stuff like Charismatic Conqueror. Whenever an artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped and under an opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you make a 1/1 white vampire creature token with lifelink. So the question is this a plan card for tokens, or is this a disruption card that slows your opponents down? And
Yeah, it's a tough one.
For me, this one's kind of both.
Yeah.
I think more likely when a Charismatic Conqueror comes down across from me, my stuff's entering tapped. I'm not giving you 1/1s at all.
Especially in decks that really can use those 1/1s. Yeah.
I will take the tempo hit to not give you a ton of lifelinking.
Yeah,
creatures.
unless it's very important that you have the thing under untapped.
So I would say more often it's a mass disruption, but if you're in the kind of playgroup where they're like, they just give me all the 1/1s, then you know it's more of a token piece rather than a disruption piece. So those are calls that you can make for yourself based on how the card actually functions for you, how it actually functions in the deck.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about some corner cases to round it out here. So these are cards that could be either targeted or mass disruption. We mentioned Cyclonic Rift and Vandal Blast earlier, but there are also cards like Curse of the Swine, which is X blue to exile X target creatures. But for each creature exiled this way, its controller makes a 2/2 green boar creature token.
Most of the time, this is going to be mass disruption. It's in there to cast for X is greater, but you can, in a pinch, just take care of 1 creature.
Yeah, same with Cyclonic Rift. Even Mystic Confluence, where you can bounce a creature to its hand, but the other options are pretty juicy to either mana leak or draw a card.
Yeah, Mystic Confluence, the reason I like playing it so much is it's mass disruption, it's targeted disruption, and it's card draw.
Yeah.
It just checks so many boxes, and it can throw a wrench in an opponent's plan in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, so you should consider putting these cards in your deck and having them be in multiple categories. Now, however, Cyclonic Rift, if you're like the kind of player that says, I will never cast this for 1 in the blue, it's only in there for its overload cost, then maybe it's not in both categories and you want to bolster your individual targeted disruption up. But in general, these are great because they're flexible, and if you're the type of player that it wants to have that option to do it in a way that is one or adding a little bit of everything, then you can definitely put it in multiple categories.
And keep in mind, if you have a lot of cards that are living in both spaces that are both targeted and mass, you probably want to up the numbers on both of them a little bit because it is about density. You want to make sure that you draw your mass and targeted disruption in the game. So don't do the bare minimum and have every single card overlap.
Yeah, and only have 9 or whatever total.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about is there's definitely commanders that turn non-disruption or minimal disruption into disruption.
Yeah.
And that's usually because they're a disruptive commander or enable a disruptive plan.
Yeah.
I think the most obvious example of like what I'm talking about here is Reaper King.
Yeah, this is a 5-color Scarecrow deck that whenever Scarecrow enters the battlefield and enters your control, you can destroy a target permanent.
When you cast a Scarecrow, normally that's not going to blow stuff up.
But with Reaper King out, every Scarecrow or Changeling card in your hand becomes a removal spell.
Right. So I would call Reaper King probably a mass disruptive commander because it's repeatable removal. But you could start to look at Scarecrows in your deck as targeted disruption, and maybe you drop down on the regular pieces of disruption, of targeted disruption, because you have this huge source of repeatable disruption in the command zone.
Yeah, but good luck having it stick around, though. People will kill this thing immediately.
Yeah.
There's also a card like Judith, Carnage Connoisseur, that when you cast instant or sorceries, you can choose to give it Death Touch and Lifelink. So now this turns cards like Tectonic Hazard, which deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature they control, into a massive one-sided board wipe.
Yeah. Judith is a disruptive deck. It is powerful against creature decks because of the redundancy of this kind of effect. There's Tectonic Hazard, there's End the Festivities, there's dozens
So
of
many
these.
ways of doing this.
So considering Judith, this sort of catalyst for transforming these cards into mass disruption, gives you a very clear picture of what your deck's plan is. You're like, if I'm marking Tectonic Hazard and all the iterations of it as mass disruption spells, I can see why this deck is so frustrating to play against and so dominant against creature decks.
Yeah.
Hirobi Death Whale is sort of similar to Reaper King, where it just turns anything that can target a creature into a removal spell.
Yeah, which includes people targeting your commander, notably. But if you have cards that say choose any number of target creatures, like Cauldron of Souls, then boom, you can instantly tap that thing and remove a bunch of different things.
Yeah, so you can see in most decks, if you put Cauldron of Souls in, that's a protection piece. That's a board wipe protection. But in Hirobi, this is mass disruption. The plan is to use this to remove a lot of creatures.
Yeah, exactly.
Or Shadow Alley Denizen is normally evasion, but in a Hirobi deck, it can be marked as mass disruption because of what your commander does.
Yeah, you're giving creatures Intimidate whenever other black creatures enter the battlefield. Typically, it's like, oh, I'm only going to do it to my stuff. No, you do it to your opponent's stuff.
Don't do it to your stuff.
Don't do it to your stuff.
That is not a combo.
Yeah.
Finally, there's cards like Thassa Deep Dwelling. If you have Thassa in the command zone, Thassa takes targeted disruption and can turn it into mass disruption.
Yeah.
So like having a single creature that enters the battlefield and bounces something, if you have Thassa Deep Dwelling, you know that you can repeatedly do that. So you don't really count Thassa as a mass disruption spell, but maybe you start to look at those bounce creatures as, okay, this is closer to mass disruption than even targeted disruption once my plan is online.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't need 6, or maybe that you're leaning into the fact that it's super disruptive and you want to go up to 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting how having different commanders in the command zone can change what cards count as mass disruption or what cards feel like mass disruption.
Yeah.
Depending on what they actually do.
Yeah, and then there's just commanders that are just straight up mass disruption, which is they're just printed on them. You don't need other cards to do it. They themselves have it all built in. Zeator the Incinerator is a way to end step sack a creature, and then Zeator deals that damage to that creature's power to any target. You create 3 treasure tokens.
Yeah, repeated removal. This one isn't super fast, but the fact that you can keep removing things every single turn says that Zeatora can operate as mass disruption if that's how you built it. If you know when you're flinging stuff with Zeatora, you're going face, and that's the plan, then I would consider this more of a plan spell, more of a burn spell.
Yeah.
Chatterfang is a great example of a mass disruption commander because it has this activated ability of black, sacrifice X squirrels, target creature gets +X, -X until end of turn.
Yeah.
Keep sacrificing stuff, keep killing more stuff, comboing off. Chatterfang, be powerful.
Yeah, and then there's Maha, its Feathers Knight from Bloomburrow, which just makes all creatures have base toughness 1. So that will oftentimes be very easy to kill all of them with effects that give -1/-1. It is a way to disrupt your opponent's plans by now all of a sudden making any attack very difficult because everything can block and kill it.
Worth noting that something like Turgid that says when your opponents disrupt you, something good happens. Turgid isn't mass disruption. She encourages it. She benefits from it.
But her herself.
But her plan, her goal is like she gives you the benefit from mass disruption. So the deck is probably heavily mass disruption, but she herself is not.
Yep. Very cool.
Okay. So those are the many boxes that you can check with mass disruption. Hopefully we give you a better understanding of just what that term means and how you can recognize it in your decks. Jimmy and I have a couple of mass disruption effects that we really like and we lean on really heavily. We're going to talk about those at the end of this episode, so stick around if you want to hear us just talk about some of our favorites in this category. But we're going to get to that in just a moment, because if you want to pick up any of the cards that we talked about today, you can support the show and you can support us by going to cardkingdom.com/command. Card Kingdom has a huge selection of cards. You can put a giant order list online and pick exactly the printing and the foiling and the condition that you want, the price, all on the same page. You can get out of there quickly, and then when that package shows up on your doorstep, you have a ton of the cards that you wanted in one spot. So you can get building and you can get playing. So support the show, support a great company that always has the cards that you want and need, and support the show while you're using our affiliate link at cardkingdom.com/command.
And protect your collection. Go to ultrapro.com/command to check out their amazing inventory of stuff that is for protecting your deck and making it look nice, shiny, and cool. Playmats, deck boxes, sleeves, dicey, you name it, they got it. Apex sleeves coming out with each set. So go to ultrapro.com/command, pick up some of that stuff, and hopefully we get to sign some of it when we see you at the next MagicCon.
All right. Thanks for sticking around through our sponsor callouts. Before we go, I just want to talk about what are your favorite mass disruption spells? I do think that this is where a lot of us vary.
Yeah, totally.
There's definitely staples that you lean on, like Toxic Deluge. I think we all play a lot of.
Yep.
But some of my favorite mass disruption or targeted disruption spell to cast lately has been Galadriel's Dismissal.
Yeah, this card's crazy.
The single white for an instant with kicker 2 and a white. It says target creature phases out. If the spell was kicked, each creature target player controls phases out instead.
So it's a protection plan card with just 1 mana, but for 4 mana, you can basically shut down an entire player's board state.
Yeah, they say you have no blockers and you thought you did. They say you have no attackers and you thought you did.
Yeah, now you're open.
They remove a creature that's attacking you, and it also can protect your entire board or an important piece.
Yeah, this completely hosed me in an extra turns game we played with our monocolored or our named decks. Yeah,
it super did.
Yeah,
it was
powerful.
When it's in your hand, you're like, wow, there's something that I'm going to be able to do something really powerful with this. And that flexibility goes a really long way. And I think looking at cards like this make you more excited to put mass disruption cards in your deck, because you're like, this could be a lot of things, and you can see how it could win you the game or save you the game or any number of things.
Card's so powerful.
Yeah. What do you got?
Well, I was going to say Blasphemous Act because it's just so obvious.
But it's a great one.
But one card that both of us had on our list that just is so impressive is, again, from the Lord of the Rings, I think holiday box set or whatever.
Yeah.
Mists of Lorien. 2 in the blue for a sorcery. You can play a replicate cost of blue, so you can copy it for each time you pay its replicate cost. But just 2 in the blue to return target non-land permanent and each other non-land permanent with the same mana value as that permanent to its owner's hands.
Oh, yeah.
All 0 drops, 1 drops, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you pay just an extra blue, you get to choose 2 numbers. This feels like austere command type stuff where you're really selectively choosing things to go away. You can protect your board while completely hosing a token deck or whatever else on someone else's board, making them replay all their expensive 4 drops or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Typically, I think this card is cast for 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 are the most common I've seen, but this thing can just completely hose someone.
This card is incredible in my Octavia list because Octavia's 10, so she never gets bounced in this. And basically every permanent that the deck plays is 2.
Yeah.
Because they're 2 mana flyers. So if I can do 1, 3, 4, and 0, it replicates, triggers Octavia, turns all my 2 mana things into 8/8s, and then swings.
Yeah.
It's an absurd card that can absolutely wreck the right person at the table.
Thank you, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. We talked about a lot of Lord of the Rings cards today. I've got one more that we didn't mention that will end the game in addition to disrupting your opponents. It's Taunt from the Rampart.
It's a Goad creature, or a Goad spell.
Yeah, it's Goad. All creatures your opponents control until your next turn. Those creatures can't block.
Wow.
Uh-oh. They're coming in.
Yep.
So it doesn't have that same effect that Disrupt Decorum has, where it's like some value creatures could die in combat. But Taunt from the Rampart is just like, the plans you had, they're out the window. Now you're doing this.
Yeah, see you later, alligator. And so yeah, it's a powerful card. I've seen that card end game just on the spot. I also wanted to mention Pest Infestation for XX green, destroy up to X target artifacts and or enchantments. And you create twice X1/1 black and green pest creature tokens with, when this token dies, you gain 1 life. So this can also just be board on a stick where you don't have to actually target anything with it. And you just make a ton of 1/1s.
Yeah.
So very cool card.
This card's bananas. Like the fact that this can be a very powerful plan card that can give you a board out of nowhere and a very powerful disruption spell just makes it really easy to find a spot for.
Yep. All right. So good.
I want to mention Split Up because I'm obsessed with this card. I put it in so many decks lately. It's 1 white for a sorcery. Choose 1, destroy all tapped creatures, or destroy all untapped creatures.
Yeah, you can really plan for this one. Just leave everything untapped, wait for everyone to commit, and then boom.
Does your commander have a tap ability? Sick. Tap it. Blow up everything else.
Yeah.
It's good in my activated ability deck. It's so good in my my new cycling deck where like my commander has activated abilities and plays a lot of like tappers and untappers. It's good in aggro decks where you can attack and everybody else still has creatures untapped. Most of the time you're going to use this to destroy all untapped creatures. But sometimes if an opponent just swung out and cracked somebody for like 20 damage in the air or something,
then you just
wreck their flyers.
And then you go to combat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty exceptional, honestly. So if you haven't tried Split Up, give it a shot. There's a lot of cool spots that it fits into.
Yeah. Let us know in the comments as well what your favorite Mass Disruption spell is, if it's just Bajuka Bog or whatever, or if it's one of these special Lord of the Rings cards we talked about. And of course, big thanks to our amazing team here at the Command Zone. Sebastian Salazar, Karina Cruz, Gaurav Galai, Jamie Block, Jordan Pridgeon, Jake Boss, Becky Bell, Rachel Kendra, Eric Lem, Manta Lung, Josh Murphy, Evan Limburger, Sam Waldo, and JLK, aka Josh Lee Kwai. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Go mess up your opponents.
Or not.